The 1970s and 1980s were turbulent decades for the American auto industry, marked by rising fuel prices, economic downturns, and changing consumer preferences. As a result, many manufacturers released a range of budget cars that were often subpar in terms of design, reliability, and performance. Here are 9 crappy cars from the 1970s and 1980s that were often the only option for low-income buyers, showcasing their shortcomings and the problems that those who drove them faced.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 9. The AMC Gremlin, introduced in 1970, was one of the first American attempts at a subcompact car to compete with the influx of imports from brands like Volkswagen and Toyota. However, by 1974, the Gremlin had become notorious for its awkward proportions, poor engineering, and underwhelming performance. Intended to be a quirky, economical car, it instead became the butt of many jokes due to its bizarre design and uninspiring mechanicals. The Gremlin's most glaring issue was its appearance. It looked as if a normal car had been chopped in half: long hood, short rear, and a truncated tail that ended abruptly behind the rear wheels. This odd shape gave it a strange, unbalanced look and earned it a reputation as one of the ugliest cars of the decade. The chopped rear didn't just affect aesthetics, it also hampered the car's aerodynamics, resulting in mediocre fuel efficiency for a subcompact car. The interior was bare bones and cheap, with plasticky materials and minimal features. Buyers expecting a modern or comfortable experience were disappointed, especially compared to import alternatives that offered better quality for a similar price. The base Gremlin came with a tiny 2.0-liter inline-4 engine, producing around 80 horsepower. This engine, sourced from AMC's partnership with Volkswagen, was underpowered, especially for highway driving. Buyers looking for anything beyond basic urban transportation were left frustrated. Optional 6-cylinder engines, such as the 3.8-liter or 4.2-liter, were available, but even these struggled to deliver decent performance due to the car's poor power-to-weight ratio. Although marketed as an economical car, the Gremlin's larger engine options drank more fuel than expected for a subcompact. At a time when fuel efficiency was becoming increasingly important due to the 1973 oil crisis, the Gremlin's thirst for gas made it less competitive. Early Gremlins were plagued by fit and finish issues, with uneven body panels, poor paint jobs, and rattling interiors. Frequent mechanical problems, such as oil leaks and electrical failures, made the car expensive to maintain, despite its budget-friendly initial price. Due to the short wheelbase and unbalanced weight distribution, the Gremlin had poor handling and felt unstable at higher speeds. This made it less appealing for drivers seeking anything beyond basic transportation. The car's odd design and disappointing performance quickly made it a running joke among consumers and automotive critics. While AMC attempted to market the Gremlin as a fun, quirky alternative to more serious imports, most people simply found it ugly and awkward-looking. The Volkswagen Beetle and the Toyota Corolla offered similar or better fuel economy with superior reliability and build quality. The Gremlin, by comparison, felt outdated and cheaply made. Today, the Gremlin has achieved cult status among enthusiasts who appreciate its quirky design and nostalgia factor. Some collectors have embraced its oddball nature, restoring them as a nod to 1970s automotive history. The Gremlin's failure exposed AMC's struggles to compete with imports and emphasized the need for better engineering and design. However, it also set the stage for AMC to take risks with more unconventional cars like the Pacer. The 1974 AMC Gremlin was a bizarre and flawed attempt at a subcompact car that didn't quite succeed in its mission to offer a practical alternative to imported vehicles. Its awkward proportions, underpowered engine, poor fuel economy, and lack of refinement ensured that it would be remembered more as a punchline than a serious contender in the automotive market. Despite its flaws, the Gremlin remains an interesting relic of 1970s automotive experimentation, both a cautionary tale and a quirky classic. Number 8, the Ford Pinto is perhaps one of the most infamous cars in automotive history, not just for its poor build quality, but for the scandals surrounding its safety issues. Designed to be a low-cost subcompact vehicle aimed at competing with small import cars like the Volkswagen Beetle and Toyota Corolla, the Pinto initially sold well. However, it soon earned a dark reputation due to exploding fuel tanks and rear-end collisions, coupled with Ford's decision to not address the defect despite knowing the risks. The Pinto was developed in just 25 months, instead of the usual 43 months, a cost-cutting rush to compete in the booming subcompact market. This accelerated timeline led to design compromises and overlooked flaws. The Pinto's interior was cheaply made, with thin plastic parts that broke easily in uncomfortable seats. Buyers often reported rattling noises and other signs of poor assembly within months of ownership. The car was extremely basic, offering little in terms of amenities or refinement. Even power steering, air conditioning, and radios were optional features. Compared to Japanese imports, which offered better build quality and similar prices, the Pinto felt outdated. The base model came with a 1.6-liter inline 4 engine producing 75 horsepower. While sufficient for city driving, it struggled on highways. An optional 2.0-liter engine offered slightly better power, but the car remained slow and unimpressive. The 3-speed manual transmission was rough and noisy, while the available automatic transmission reduced what little performance the Pinto had. Although the Pinto was advertised as an economical car, its fuel efficiency wasn't exceptional. Many of the imports it was meant to compete with had similar or better gas mileage. The Pinto's handling was poor due to its light rear end and low build quality, making it prone to sliding and instability in wet conditions. One of the Pinto's most notorious design issues was the placement of the fuel tank between the rear bumper and the rear axle. In rear-end collisions, the tank was prone to rupturing and leaking fuel, leading to catastrophic fires and explosions. Worse still, the bolts on the differential could puncture the tank during a collision, increasing the likelihood of fuel leaks and ignition. Ford engineers identified the fuel tank defect during development, but the company decided not to fix it because it would have cost approximately $11 per car to install a protective shield. Instead, Ford performed a cost-benefit analysis, concluding that the cost of lawsuits from expected fatalities would be cheaper than fixing the issue. This corporate negligence scandal became public during subsequent lawsuits, cementing the Pinto's reputation as one of the most dangerous and unethical vehicles ever produced. The Pinto was involved in numerous fatal accidents, resulting in high-profile lawsuits. In one case, a California jury awarded $128 million to the family of a victim who burned to death after a rear-end collision. In 1978, Ford finally issued a recall of 1.5 million Pintos. But by then, the damage to the car's reputation and Ford's was already done. The Pinto became a symbol of corporate greed and unsafe design. News outlets and consumer watchdog groups heavily criticized Ford, leading to public distrust. Some buyers even refused to drive their Pintos, fearing for their lives. Despite strong initial sales, over 328,000 units in 1971, the Pinto's reputation quickly declined after the safety issues became public. Sales plummeted in the late 1970s as buyers lost confidence in the car. The Pinto remained in production until 1980, but Ford could never shake the stigma attached to it. Even today, the Ford Pinto is remembered as a textbook example of corporate misconduct. It is often cited as one of the worst cars ever made, not just because of the car itself, but because of the moral and ethical failures behind its production. The 1971 Ford Pinto represents one of the biggest automotive disasters in history. While intended to be an affordable, practical car, it instead became synonymous with unsafe design and corporate negligence. Its exploding fuel tanks, cheap build quality, and underwhelming performance combined to create a car that not only failed in the market, but also severely damaged Ford's reputation. Despite its early sales success, the Pinto will forever be remembered as a symbol of profit over safety decision-making. Number 7, the Dodge Aspen, introduced in 1976, was meant to replace the aging Dart and compete in the midsize car market. Initially, the Aspen and its sibling, the Plymouth Volare, was marketed as a reliable, stylish, and practical vehicle. It even won Motor Trend's Car of the Year award upon release, which gave Chrysler a brief marketing boost. However, the Aspen soon became synonymous with rust problems, engine issues, and poor reliability, making it one of Dodge's most disappointing cars. Chrysler aimed for the Aspen to be a versatile family vehicle, offered in several body styles, including a two-door coupe, four-door sedan, and station wagon. Although it looked modern at first, the design was conservative and unremarkable, and by the late 1970s, it felt dated. The Aspen was marketed as a compact car, but it was actually larger and heavier than many competitors in its class, which reduced its fuel economy at a time when buyers were increasingly concerned about efficiency due to the 1970s oil crisis. Dodge offered several engine options, including a 225 cubic inch slant 6 and V8 engines ranging from 318 to 360 cubic inches. While these engines were powerful on paper, they were plagued by reliability issues. Starting problems and frequent engine stalls became common complaints. Some models experienced issues with ignition timing, which could cause poor acceleration and misfires. The optional 3-speed TorqueFlite automatic transmission was one of Chrysler's better components, but it wasn't immune to shift issues and mechanical failures. The Aspen was intended to provide a smoother ride than earlier Dodge models, but its suspension system was prone to failure. Owners reported suspension noise and wear, particularly with the torsion bars, leading to costly repairs. The Aspen was notorious for severe rust issues, often appearing within the first couple of years of ownership. Poor quality control at Chrysler plants, coupled with inadequate rust proofing, meant that fenders, doors, and even the frame would corrode rapidly. The Aspen's rust issues were so common that it became a running joke, with many cars developing visible holes or losing structural integrity after just a few winters. In addition to rust, the Aspen suffered from poor fit and finish. Interior trim pieces were known to rattle, break, or fall off within months of use. Many owners reported misaligned doors and windows, which allowed water leaks and drafts into the cabin. Chrysler had to issue several warranty repairs for rust damage and mechanical failures, which strained the company's finances. The cost of repairs for common issues quickly became unsustainable. The Aspen was subject to multiple recalls, including one for the fuel system, which posed a risk of fire or leaks. Other recalls addressed faulty carburetors and ignition systems that could cause the engine to stall unexpectedly. The Dodge Aspen sold reasonably well during its first year, thanks in part to positive press coverage in the Motor Trend Car of the Year award. Chrysler marketed it heavily as a modern replacement for the Dart, with the expectation that it would become a core part of the lineup. Once owners began experiencing rust issues and mechanical failures, the Aspen's reputation plummeted. Sales declined dramatically by the end of the 1970s as the car's problems became widely known among consumers. Many owners were frustrated with Chrysler's inability to address chronic quality issues, causing long-term damage to the brand's image. The Aspen, along with other problematic models of the era, contributed to Chrysler's financial troubles by the late 1970s. The combination of rising warranty costs, recall expenses, and declining sales pushed the company closer to bankruptcy, leading to its government bailout in 1979. The 1976 Dodge Aspen is a classic example of a car that looked promising at launch, but quickly fell apart, literally and figuratively. With severe rust problems, engine troubles, and disappointing build quality, the Aspen became a symbol of Chrysler's struggles during the 1970s. While it initially won awards and sold well, the car's rapid decline in reliability and reputation ensured that it was remembered as one of Dodge's biggest missteps. Today, the Aspen is considered a cautionary tale in automotive history, showing how early praise and sales success can be undone by poor quality control and engineering failures. Number 6. The Ford Maverick was initially introduced in 1969 as an affordable, compact alternative to the larger sedans in Ford's lineup. However, by 1975, the Maverick's appeal had faded. It became clear that Ford had done little to modernize the model, and it felt increasingly outdated in a competitive market. With bland styling, outdated mechanical components, and a lack of innovation, the Maverick struggled to maintain relevance during the mid-1970s. It also suffered from issues related to build quality and performance, leaving many owners dissatisfied. While the Maverick was meant to compete with rising imports, like the Toyota Corolla and Datsun 510, It lacked visual excitement. The exterior design was boxy and conservative, failing to stand out in a decade known for increasingly bold automotive styling. By 1975, the Maverick's styling, unchanged since its launch, felt dated and unremarkable, especially compared to more modern designs. The Maverick's interior was basic and uninspiring, with hard plastic surfaces, minimal instrumentation, and limited comfort features. While the car was marketed as a budget-friendly option, the Spartan interior left little to attract buyers looking for more than bare-bones transportation. The Maverick relied heavily on carryover technology from the 1960s, including its outdated chassis and suspension setup. This resulted in a harsh ride quality and poor handling compared to newer compact cars entering the market. The 200 cubic inch inline-six base engine, 250 cubic inch inline-six, optional 302 cubic inch V8. However, even the V8 option didn't provide the performance buyers expected, as power output was hampered by emissions controls. The car felt sluggish and unresponsive, particularly with the smaller six-cylinder engines. The Maverick was introduced as a response to rising concerns about fuel economy, but it failed to meet expectations. Even with the inline-six engine, the Maverick was not particularly efficient, falling behind smaller, lighter Japanese imports during the 1970s oil crisis. Like many American cars of the era, the Maverick was prone to rust, especially around the fenders, doors, and rocker panels. Poor rust-proofing resulted in widespread complaints, tarnishing the car's reputation among owners. In addition to rust, the Maverick suffered from mechanical problems, including brake failure, ignition issues, and stalling. Many of these issues were related to poor manufacturing quality and cost-cutting efforts by Ford. By 1975, the Maverick struggled to compete with more modern cars like the Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, and Volkswagen Rabbit, which offered better fuel economy, reliability, and design. These competitors provided a more attractive overall package, leaving the Maverick feeling like a relic of the past. The introduction of the Ford Granada in 1975, aimed at a similar segment, further eroded Maverick sales. Buyers who wanted a Ford compact or mid-size sedan were more inclined to choose the Granada, which was newer and more refined. Although the Maverick initially sold well upon its release in 1969, sales dropped steadily by the mid-1970s. Consumers were increasingly drawn to imports and newer domestic models, leaving the Maverick as an uninspired option for buyers with few other choices. The Maverick was often seen as a get-what-you-pay-for car, offering little beyond basic transportation. It lacked the refinement, performance, or design appeal that many buyers were looking for. As a result, it quickly faded from public memory. The failure of the Maverick to keep up with changing consumer expectations forced Ford to rethink its approach to compact cars. This eventually led to the introduction of more advanced models like the Ford Fairmont, 1978, and later the Ford Escort, 1981, which were better suited to market demands. The 1975 Ford Maverick exemplifies a car that overstayed its welcome in the market. By relying on outdated technology, bland design, and lackluster performance, Ford failed to keep the Maverick competitive in an era of shifting consumer priorities. While it was initially popular, the Maverick's inability to adapt to the 1970s oil crisis and competition from imports ultimately sealed its fate. Today, the Maverick is remembered as a mediocre car that fell behind the times, serving as a lesson in the importance of innovation and market awareness. Number 5. The 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Coupe was marketed as a personal luxury car intended to offer style, comfort, and performance at a reasonable price. However, the execution failed to live up to expectations, and the LeBaron developed a reputation for poor build quality, unreliable mechanics, and cheap materials. Released during the peak of Chrysler's financial struggles, the car reflected many of the cost-cutting measures that plagued the company's products of that era. Chrysler's design in the late 1970s was trying to keep up with trends, but the LeBaron Coupe came off as neither sporty nor luxurious. Its boxy shape with padded vinyl roofs and upper windows felt dated even by 1979, and it lacked the refinement of competing personal luxury cars like the Buick Regal and Ford Thunderbird. Optional landau roofs and faux wood trim added to the feeling of artificial luxury, making it seem like a car that was trying too hard to look expensive. Chrysler used low-grade plastic, vinyl, and cloth upholstery, which wore out quickly. The materials inside felt cheap and detracted from the car's luxury aspirations. Trim pieces and dashboard components were prone to rattling, cracking, and falling off after only a few years. Buyers were often disappointed to find that the comfort features, such as power windows or air conditioning, frequently malfunctioned due to poor electrical components. 225 cubic inch slant 6 base engine, 318 cubic inch V8, 360 cubic inch V8 optional. Unfortunately, power output was modest at best. Even with the larger V8 engines, the LeBaron struggled to deliver responsive performance, especially with emissions restrictions and inefficient carburetors. It felt sluggish and underpowered compared to more refined competitors. The LeBaron was introduced during a time when Americans were becoming more conscious of fuel consumption due to the 1970s oil crises. But Chrysler's engines remained inefficient. The car's fuel economy was disappointing, especially when compared to newer downsized competitors. Many LeBarons were equipped with Chrysler's Torque Flight automatic transmission, which was usually reliable. However, poor quality control at the time led to frequent slippage and rough shifting issues, frustrating owners. Owners reported various mechanical problems with the LeBaron coupe, including ignition issues, oil leaks, and overheating. The car's electrical system was also notoriously unreliable. Rust became a common complaint for owners living in colder climates. Chrysler's inconsistent rust-proofing meant that many LeBarons developed severe rust on the rocker panels, door frames, and wheel wells after just a few years of use. The LeBaron's reputation for falling apart prematurely became widespread. Owners frequently reported that even with regular maintenance, the car developed chronic mechanical and cosmetic issues, leading many to trade in or abandon the car long before expected. The LeBaron Coupe was launched into a highly competitive segment that included cars like the Buick Regal, Chevrolet Monte Carlo, and Ford Thunderbird, all of which offered better performance, more reliable engineering, and greater comfort. While Chrysler attempted to position the LeBaron as a luxury car, the brand's reputation for poor reliability and the low quality of materials undermined that effort. By 1979, Chrysler was in severe financial distress, which affected quality control across its product line. The company's problems were reflected in the LeBaron as buyers grew increasingly wary of Chrysler vehicles. The 1979 LeBaron Coupe came to symbolize Chrysler's declining fortunes. It became notorious for falling apart within just a few years, and used models were often found in poor condition, reinforcing the car's reputation as a low-quality vehicle. Chrysler eventually rebounded in the 1980s with the introduction of more innovative models like the K-cars and minivans, but the LeBaron Coupe became an example of what not to do in terms of design, quality, and marketing. The 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Coupe failed to meet the expectations of buyers looking for a reliable and luxurious personal car. Poor quality materials, frequent mechanical failures, and uninspired design made it an unpleasant ownership experience. Introduced at a time when Chrysler was struggling financially, the LeBaron epitomized the company's lack of direction and quality control in the late 1970s. Though it eventually found some success in other forms, the 1979 LeBaron Coupe remains a cautionary tale about cost-cutting and poor execution in the automotive industry. Number 4. The Triumph Stag, introduced in 1970 by the British Leyland Motor Corporation, BLMC, was intended to be a luxurious, open-top grand tourer that combined the performance of a sports car with the comfort of a high-end cruiser. It featured elegant styling by Giovanni Michelotti and aimed to compete with premium European and American cars like the Mercedes-Benz SL. However, despite its promising concept, the Stag quickly developed a reputation for being one of the most unreliable British cars of its time, plagued by poor engineering, quality control issues, and high maintenance costs. The Stag's sleek design by Michelotti was undeniably attractive, with a distinctive T-bar roof available as both a hardtop and convertible. However, the two-door design wasn't as practical as other touring cars, and the removable roof sections were prone to leaks, which led to complaints about water ingress. The Stag was meant to balance sporty handling with luxury, but it lacked the refinement of competing models and failed to live up to the expectations of discerning buyers. The heart of the Triumph Stag was a 3.0-liter SOHC by8, developed in-house by Triumph. The engine was rushed into production, and instead of using a more reliable engine from Rover, such as the well-regarded Buick-derived V8, Triumph chose to build its own. Overheating issues were common due to poor cooling system design. Warped cylinder heads resulted from the combination of aluminum and cast iron components with mismatched thermal expansion rates. Timing chain failures occurred prematurely, adding to the maintenance burden. Many early Stags suffered head gasket failures within a few thousand miles, resulting in expensive repairs. This issue was exacerbated by poor access to replacement parts and inconsistent maintenance procedures, especially in overseas markets like the United States. Owners often found the V8 difficult to repair, as mechanics unfamiliar with British cars struggled with the Stag's complex design and quirky engine setup. Despite the V8 engine, the Stag produced only 145 horsepower, which was underwhelming for a car in its class, especially when compared to competitors like the Jaguar E-Type or Mercedes SL. The car's 0 to 60 miles per hour time of around 10 seconds was sluggish for a sports tour, further diminishing its appeal. While the Stag offered a relatively comfortable ride, its heavy weight and vague steering made it less engaging to drive than many of its rivals. The car also suffered from body flex when driven with the roof panels removed, reducing its handling precision. Routine maintenance of the Triumph Stag was complicated and expensive, with frequent engine repairs and timing chain adjustments necessary to keep the car running smoothly. Owners were forced to spend a great deal on upkeep, and finding qualified mechanics outside of the UK was often a challenge. The Stag was built during British Leyland's turbulent years, which meant poor quality control across the production line. Electrical components often failed, and leaking roofs, faulty gauges, and non-working electrics became common complaints. Early models were also prone to rust, especially in the door sills and undercarriage, adding to the car's already poor reputation. Triumph originally hoped to sell the Stag in the lucrative American market, but the car's reputation for unreliability quickly spread. U.S. buyers were frustrated by the lack of available parts and skilled service technicians, leading many to abandon their cars after a few years. Poor performance in the U.S. contributed to the Stag's commercial failure abroad. Triumph sold fewer than 26,000 units over 8 years, well below expectations. The Stag's failure was a significant blow to the Triumph brand in British Leyland, which was already struggling financially. The car became a symbol of the decline of the British automotive industry, with Triumph never fully recovering from the Stag's disastrous launch. Despite its troubled past, the Triumph Stag has gained a cult following among enthusiasts who appreciate its unique design and attempt at grand touring luxury. Owners today often swap out the original engine for more reliable alternatives, such as Rover V8s or Ford engines, to address the car's mechanical shortcomings. The Stag remains a cautionary tale about rushing a car to market without thorough testing and the risks of poor quality control. Its legacy is often referenced in discussions about British Leyland's mismanagement and the decline of the UK's automotive industry during the 1970s. The 1971 Triumph Stag was a classic example of style over substance. Its attractive design and luxury ambitions were undone by unreliable mechanics, high maintenance costs, and poor quality control. What could have been a serious competitor to the Mercedes SL turned into a maintenance nightmare that tarnished Triumph's reputation. Today, the Stag stands as both a collector's item and a cautionary tale. Number 3. The 1977 Dodge Colt was a subcompact car imported from Mitsubishi Motors and sold under the Dodge brand by Chrysler. Like many small cars of the time, the Colt was introduced as a response to the growing popularity of fuel-efficient imports in the U.S. during the 1970s. However, it failed to stand out due to mediocre performance, poor build quality, and uninspiring design. While it was affordable and reasonably fuel-efficient, the Colt did not offer much else, making it an unimpressive option in the increasingly competitive small car market. The 1977 Colt had a bland, generic appearance typical of many compact Japanese imports of the time, With its boxy shape, simple headlights, and basic grille, it lacked the charm or excitement that buyers might expect from a subcompact car, especially when compared to competitors like the Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla. Dodge added minimal styling changes to distinguish the Colt from its Mitsubishi twin, making it feel more like a rebranded import than a car tailored to American tastes. The Colt's cabin was filled with low-quality plastics, thin fabrics, and uncomfortable seats. The materials wore out quickly, leading to cracked dashboards, sagging seats, and malfunctioning switches. Buyers expecting even minimal comfort were often disappointed, as road noise and vibration were prominent. The 1977 Colt was offered with a 1.6-liter inline-4 engine producing about 83 horsepower, which struggled to deliver adequate performance. While this might have been acceptable for a lightweight economy car, the Colt's lack of power made it sluggish, especially when loaded with passengers or cargo. The 4-speed manual transmission was notchy and imprecise, frustrating drivers. An optional 3-speed automatic further sapped performance, making the car slow to accelerate and unpleasant to drive on highways. Despite its small size, the Colt's steering felt vague, and body roll was excessive during cornering. Its suspension was tuned for comfort rather than precision, leading to poor handling characteristics that failed to inspire confidence. Like many early Mitsubishi vehicles, the Colt suffered from assembly quality issues. Parts would loosen or break prematurely, leading to rattles, squeaks, and frequent minor repairs. This was a major problem in colder climates, where weather exposure caused seals and trim pieces to degrade rapidly. Rust was a notorious problem for the Colt, particularly in the door sills, fenders, and undercarriage. The car's thin paint and poor rust-proofing meant that many models would begin to corrode after just a few years, significantly shortening their lifespan. Electrical failures were common, including issues with gauges, lights, and ignition systems. This unreliability frustrated owners and mechanics alike, as the Colt's imported parts were not always readily available, adding to the cost and hassle of maintenance. The one major selling point of the Colt was its fuel economy, which was respectable at around 25 to 30 miles per gallon. However, with small fuel tanks and uninspiring range, it wasn't a game changer in the compact segment. By 1977, other brands were also offering similarly efficient vehicles with better designs and reliability. While the Colt's size made it easy to park and maneuver in urban environments, it was cramped inside with limited rear seat space and a small trunk. Competing models from Honda and Toyota managed to offer better interior packaging and more practical storage solutions. The Colt struggled to compete against the Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla, and even the Volkswagen Rabbit, all of which were perceived as more reliable and better designed. Buyers viewed the Colt as a cheap import with questionable build quality, and it lacked the brand loyalty that Japanese automakers were starting to build during this period. The Colt's failure to excite consumers reflected Chrysler's overall struggles in the 1970s. Rather than developing competitive subcompact cars domestically, Chrysler relied heavily on Mitsubishi imports like the Colt, which felt out of place in the Dodge lineup and did little to bolster the brand's reputation. The 1977 Dodge Colt is largely forgotten today, overshadowed by more successful small cars from other manufacturers. Its poor build quality and lack of character meant that few were kept on the road, and surviving examples are rare. The Colt highlights Chrysler's dependence on imports during a time when the company struggled to develop competitive small cars. This strategy ultimately didn't pay off, as cars like the Colt failed to connect with American buyers in the way that competitors from Honda and Toyota did. The 1977 Dodge Colt was a half-hearted attempt at offering a small, fuel-efficient car in the American market. Its underpowered engine, uninspiring design, and poor build quality ensured that it never became more than an afterthought in automotive history. While it wasn't the worst car of its era, Number 2. The Chevrolet Citation was GM's first attempt at building a compact, front-wheel drive car to compete with imports like the Honda Civic and Toyota Corolla. It was introduced in 1980 as part of GM's X-Body platform, along with the Buick Skylark, Oldsmobile Omega, and Pontiac Phoenix. Initially, the Citation was well received, offering good fuel economy, spacious interiors, and modern styling. However, the 1981 Citation quickly became a disaster for General Motors, plagued by recalls, quality control issues, and mechanical failures. The car's tarnished reputation marked one of the biggest missteps for GM, contributing to the erosion of public trust in American automakers. The Citation's design was considered modern for its time, with its two-box hatchback layout and optional notchback sedan version. However, it quickly came across as plain and uninspired, especially when compared to sportier or more stylish European and Japanese competitors. The hatchback version was intended to be versatile, but many buyers found it unattractive, and the car's styling aged poorly. The 1981 Citation came with a 2.5-liter inline-4 engine, nicknamed the Iron Duke, and an optional 2.8-liter V6. While the V6 provided slightly better power, both engines were noisy, unrefined, and prone to reliability issues. The car's manual transmission was clunky, and the automatic transmission suffered from frequent shifting issues, leading to rough performance on the road. One of the biggest complaints about the Citation was its severe torque steer, a condition where the front-wheel drive car would pull to one side under heavy acceleration. This made the car unpredictable and dangerous to drive, especially at highway speeds. The rear drum brakes were inadequate, resulting in long stopping distances and poor overall braking performance. The Chevrolet Citation became infamous for being among the most recalled cars of its time. Over 1 million units were recalled to address faulty brakes, transmission issues, and suspension failures. The first recall involved the parking brake, which wouldn't hold properly, posing a significant safety hazard. Other recalls followed for rear suspension arms that could detach and fuel system leaks, making the car both unsafe and unreliable. The Citation suffered from shoddy assembly at GM's plants. Parts were often misaligned, and interior trim pieces rattled or fell off within months of ownership. Electrical issues were also common, with malfunctioning gauges, lights, and wipers. Rust issues plagued the car, especially in the door sills, undercarriage, and fenders, even on relatively new models. The Chevrolet Citation was initially praised by the automotive press, even winning Motor Trend's 1980 Car of the Year award. However, as reliability problems and recalls mounted, public opinion turned against the car, and by extension, against GM. Many customers who purchased the Citation felt betrayed by GM's poor quality control. This further solidified the perception that American automakers could no longer compete with reliable imports from Japan. The Citation's first year on the market saw strong sales, thanks to its compact size, fuel efficiency, and spacious interior. However, the constant recalls and negative word of mouth significantly impacted 1981 sales, and demand dropped sharply in the following years. Competitors like the Honda Accord and Toyota Corolla quickly overtook the Citation, offering better reliability, performance, and customer satisfaction. The Chevrolet Citation was eventually discontinued in 1985, replaced by the Chevrolet Cavalier, a smaller car aimed at repairing GM's reputation in the compact segment. However, the damage was done, and the Citation became a symbol of GM's failures in the 1980s. The Citation's disastrous quality control issues were a wake-up call for GM. It contributed to the decline of the domestic auto industry during a time when consumers were increasingly turning to Japanese imports. The problems associated with the Citation lingered in public memory for years, making it an example of how not to launch a car. The 1981 Chevrolet Citation is remembered as one of the biggest failures in GM's history. Despite initial promise, it was undone by poor build quality, dangerous handling, and widespread reliability issues. Its constant recalls and bad reputation not only hurt GM's image, but also helped drive customers towards more reliable imports. The Citation serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of quality control and engineering excellence in the automotive industry. Number 1. The Dodge Omni was Chrysler's attempt to offer a compact, fuel-efficient car to compete with the growing popularity of Japanese and European imports like the Honda Civic and Volkswagen Golf Rabbit. Introduced in 1978, the Omni was among the first American-built front-wheel drive hatchbacks. Although it saw initial success, The 1984 model became a prime example of the car's many shortcomings, including poor build quality, rust issues, and chronic transmission problems. While affordable and practical, the Omni's flaws contributed to a tarnished reputation, and by the mid-1980s it was far behind more reliable competitors. The Omni's design was based on the European Simca horizon, but lacked the flair or refinement of cars like the Volkswagen Golf. While practical with a hatchback layout, its boxy and utilitarian appearance was uninspiring. Cheap exterior materials contributed to its problems with durability. The thin body panels dented easily, giving the car a flimsy feel. The interior of the 1984 Omni featured hard plastic trim, low-quality fabrics, and minimal amenities. While the car was marketed as affordable, the lack of refinement made it feel excessively cheap, even for an economy car. The Omni was powered by a 1.6-liter inline-4 engine, a leftover from Chrysler's partnership with Volkswagen, and an optional 2.2-liter Chrysler engine. Both engines were underpowered, with the 1.6-liter producing only 65 horsepower, leading to sluggish acceleration. Fuel economy was decent for the time, but engine noise and vibrations made the driving experience unpleasant. The Omni's soft suspension led to a bouncy, unstable ride at highway speeds. It lacked the precise handling of European hatchbacks, with vague steering and excessive body roll. The car struggled to compete with the agility of rivals like the Golf or Civic. One of the most common complaints about the Omni was chronic transmission failures. The manual transmission was prone to synchronizer issues, leading to difficulty shifting gears, while the 3-speed automatic was unreliable and prone to early breakdowns. Owners frequently reported clutch failures on manual models, making the car a nightmare to maintain. The 1984 Dodge Omni was notorious for rusting, especially in regions with harsh winters. Rust would quickly develop on the undercarriage, door sills, wheel arches, and hatch, often within a few years of ownership. Chrysler's poor rust-proofing became a significant issue, tarnishing the Omni's reputation in colder climates. Owners also reported malfunctioning electrical components, including dash lights, wipers, and starter motors. The wiring harnesses were poorly designed, leading to frequent short circuits. The Omni was riddled with poor craftsmanship, with many parts feeling flimsy or misaligned right off the assembly line. Door seals leaked, contributing to water damage and interior mold issues. Many customers found themselves frequently visiting dealerships for repairs on everything from window cranks to door latches. Although front-wheel drive vehicles were marketed as safer in poor weather conditions, the Omni offered minimal crash protection. The car lacked structural rigidity and advanced safety features. By the standards of the 1980s, it felt outdated and unsafe, particularly in side-impact collisions. The Omni initially sold well thanks to its low price and fuel efficiency, but over time, its poor reliability and cheap build quality caught up with it. Consumer confidence plummeted, and the Omni became a frequent target of criticism in automotive reviews. By 1984, competitors like the Toyota Corolla and Honda Civic were far ahead in terms of reliability, performance, and design. Ironically, the Omni also faced competition from within Chrysler. The Chrysler K cars, such as the Dodge Aries, were better built and offered more space and comfort, making the Omni feel increasingly irrelevant in Chrysler's lineup. The 1984 Dodge Omni is remembered as a poorly built and unreliable economy car. While Chrysler managed to sell a significant number of units due to the car's low price, persistent quality issues, rust, and transmission problems doomed its reputation. It became another cautionary tale in American automotive history, demonstrating how cutting corners on quality and engineering can undermine even the best sales intentions. The Omni's failure further underscored the need for reliable, well-built compact cars, which American manufacturers struggled to provide during the 1980s.